Good morning, I'm Fiona, and I'm here with Ron Helman. Ron, I'm going to go ahead and take a snippet out of your website, which I really found quite captivating. So I'm going to share this with our audience. Your website reads, "Unlock the secrets to success. Discover the extraordinary world of Ron Helman. Step into the realm of transformation and unlock the extraordinary possibilities that lie ahead. If you find yourself yearning for what's next, it may be the perfect time to seek the assistance of a seasoned professional. Ron Helman, a Palm Beach-based fitness, wellness, and life coach extraordinaire, is here to unveil the path that lies before you, illuminated by the guiding light of expertise." Whew! Really setting the bar very high here. And we've got one more paragraph here I've got to share with our audience. "Embarking on a transformational expedition requires a plan, and Ron Helman is the mastermind behind it all. With just 50 minutes of his expert coaching per session, you can test the waters and experience the incredible power of his guidance firsthand. Once you've experienced the profound impact Ron's coaching can have on your life, you'll have the freedom to tailor a customized schedule that perfectly aligns with your unique needs." Wow.
I know. I'm feeling like the Wizard of Oz.
I am so curious, Ron.
Well, extraordinary this and magical that. But what is interesting about that is that people can change and people can walk towards the extraordinary because humans are extraordinary. Look at all the things that people have done in their lifetimes. Look at all the ways people live in the world. Mm-hmm. And why not have a little piece of that? And I think people like you and I are facilitators of promoting, helping, and opening up people to these possibilities. And the truth is, in my experience, I've worked with literally thousands of people in so many capacities. I think hear my mother talking, the proof's in the pudding, something like that. Good, Becky. And that's where we begin. And thank you for sharing this time with me. I really appreciate it, Fiona.
Oh, I'm truly delighted. Yeah. It's my honor. I do have a few questions for you.
All right.
If you don't mind just diving right in.
Let's do it.
Okay. So my first question is, what led you to becoming a fitness coach? What got you here?
Well, when you're a little baby, like all of us, I don't know if we're led anywhere. We find our way into just having our parents take care of us and hopefully nurture us, and we make our way to the playground. I mean, that's one of the first goals. And it's funny because I have this one picture on my bureau. My parents sent me to a camp called Happy Time Day Camp. I'd like to have many businesses called
Happy Time.
Yeah, a recording studio. It would be perfect. But the photo is me just sort of launching off the diving board with my arms up and open, and I'm just going, wah, like that. And, truthfully, it does speak to sort of the person who I am. I have never leaned towards a certain academia, but I have always leaned towards joy and fun. That was always the goal, to go out, yes, I could learn reading and writing, but really what I wanted to do is I wanted to be on the playground. I wanted to be on the swing set and make it buckle. I wanted to fly off and maybe flip off or play tag. And I think that speaks volumes on sort of the direction of my choices. And so I think I also had an inclination to want to be strong. And I'll tell you why. My father, who was a saxophone player by evening, was a soda man who delivered Dr. Brown's soda to people in New Jersey. And he created a business with an old truck. And once we were old enough, we would then have the responsibility to take the empties off and put the fulls back on. And these were, I'm 10 years old with a full case of soda, loading a truck. And then I got stronger and I could carry 2 cases, or I could fling it up and put it on something well over my head with finesse. And I liked it. You know, I liked feeling strong, and it gave me confidence in playing the sports and all the things I did.
You were a gymnast as well. Somewhere in there, we sprinkled, being an avid gymnast.
I mean, what was happening is I was first a little baseball player, and I loved baseball, and I played constantly. I played every imaginable way, and even my friends, even at that time, my baseball friends and my gymnastic friends, we would literally buy, you know, movies of gymnasts, for example, that were in the Olympics. I'm talking about being 13 years old with a group of kids in a cellar analyzing the Olympic winners, you know, about what they did on parallel bars and rings. And we could slow it down, and then we would know how it was done. And then we'd learn to spot each other and then learn those tricks. Or on a day, I was living in farmland primarily. Okay. And so there was a gigantic sod field of grass, perfect grass. And we'd go out there and see how many back handsprings we could throw with a slight pitch downhill. And so I was just attracted to that world. And I guess really the fast forward of, you know, how did I become a fitness and exercise trainer was a surprise to me, because I entered the arts in New York City when I moved there in 1973 at the age of 23. Okay. And so...
although you were in your father's band as a teen,
yes.
right? So you kind of threw yourself, or your father did, as mid-teens, right? 15,
yes,
16.
I was, my first professional paid gig, paid as an adult, by the way.
Oh,
my
wow.
father was quite nice that way. Was around the age of 15. Okay. I was already playing, starting in maybe 8th grade or something like that. Okay. But he was a band leader, and he taught me sort of the ropes of being a band leader and sort of a leader in general, on sort of how to manage things and make things happen, how to get jobs and all that, which is a requirement, you know, in the world of creating any kind of business.
Sure. And getting up on stage and performing.
That's right.
Right? And there is this one story, I have to say, that I found on your website as I dug through, that you must share with our audience as to one of the gigs that your father signed you up for, unbeknownst to you.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, my father was from Brooklyn. Okay. Both my parents were born into poverty. My mother from West Virginia, in Appalachia, West Virginia. I'm talking kerosene lamps and outhouses. And my father was in sort of, you know, just a sort of a difficult place in Brooklyn, in early Brooklyn. He was born in 1918, I think. And so we're talking about an early period of time. But he rose to be this band leader in New Jersey, and he learned to book a variety of bands. And a gig came up that I wasn't quite sure what it was, but when I got to the gate... And
you're 15 or 16?
I'm 17 on this one. Yes, because I was just learning to drive. And so the person, an older man comes to the gate to let the band in, and he has no clothes on. He's nude. And we continue to go in, and I'm seeing families, kind of these Jersey, Lakewood families that are all naked. Young children, teenage girls, you know. We're setting up, and by the time we actually did the job, they got dressed up a little bit. I think women had like jewelry and heels, and the men had like these short cuffs, you know. They stopped here. They were only like this long.
But their core was
naked.
Completely naked.
Everyone was naked. And I think the best part of that job was I saw a bunch of teenage girls my age sort of sitting and watching the band. And then after the job was done, they asked us to go swimming with them. We took our clothes off. And
That's when you know you've made it. Yes.
Yeah.
The end of the night, and there's skinny dipping involved.
yeah, I said, I love this career. I just, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Oh
Yeah,
my
that's all true.
goodness. Oh my goodness. I love this.
Yeah, so back to finding my way into being a trainer. Essentially, when I moved to New York, I wanted to work out. That's really what I wanted to do, and I found out about a company called Musawir, led by a gentleman named Toby Towson, who was a national champion gymnast. He was particularly unique because he was very flexible, beautiful pointed feet. His body was really quite something. He had a completely different way to execute floor exercise. And he had attracted the likeness of men and women. And there was a dance company, and they gave classes. So I entered into that world, and eventually, because I had similar skill sets, gymnasts and flipping and twisting and all that kind of stuff, they asked me to become a member of the company. And so then my first few years I was a professional modern dancer in the 70s. And it was very much like the theater of Cirque du Soleil with acrobatics. So we would story tell and choreograph, and yet we would be connected making sculpture, physical sculpture and things like that. Then that eventually moved me on to moving me on to a gentleman named Radu, who was an exercise trainer from Romania. But essentially, I had a lot of resistance about that because the resistance was arrogance, really. I thought I was in the arts and I didn't really want to teach exercise. And it was like a sort of a downgrade of that. But I learned really quickly sort of the beauty and what that could be about and what the relationships could be about. So I'll talk a little bit further on that, but that was the introduction to being a fitness trainer and an exercise trainer, teacher.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And how do you begin a coaching session with a client?
Well, at this stage of my life, actually it's similar all the way through, especially one-on-one private training. The first thing you have to realize, you're about to enter a relationship. This will be a relationship. And you want to see and get some sense of this organic compatibility, because there are thousands upon thousands of trainers and yoga teachers and all the disciplines, the massage therapists, all with immense amounts of talent that are easily there to sort of fulfill that thing. But you're giving some of your own lifetime away to another person and them to you. And so
it is a shared experience.
It's a shared experience.
Yes, it really is.
And so you want to sort of find first the beginning of a conversation. And most importantly, at that juncture, what is it that they perceive they need and want? Now, it doesn't mean that all of those things are even possible, or this would be a very positive direction for that individual, but you need to hear that really out and then hear what's behind that. I mean, I remember, this is a wild story. I was in Carnegie Hall, won't name names, and a woman, it's a private lesson, and she walks in and she starts to take off her clothes until she's in her underwear. This is true. And I'm just kind of staying relaxed about it, like, where's this going? And she said, I want this, and 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 I want to lose that, and I want a swimmer's body. I remember that ringing, and I looked at her from the chin up, and I said, do you know about the training of Olympic swimmers and what they have to do? We can go there. I may not be the right person for you, but what you're looking for will pretty much take all of your time.
Are you really ready for that?
Are you sure this is what you want to go?
Yeah.
So I had to sort of re-educate her of a starting place to sort of get the general idea of meeting her expectation, but with sort of a plan that would actually have sustainability. And then once you sort of begin to find that way and you start to have some of those experiences and introduce some exercises and all that, you find your way into that simpatico of now this is in my life. It is sort of in the wave. It's in the water. And now it will move, it will grow, it will change, and you will change. And that's, that's a long way to say, how do you start? But it is about the relationship and the ideas of what someone is desiring.
Mm-hmm. It feels to me that this would require an entire lifetime, right? And so what is the time frame on your coaching sessions? Like when...
Sure. At this point, because I'm recalibrating on my purpose and sort of how I want to be in the business now at this stage in my life. I find that like 50 minutes is a nice amount of time based on accomplishing clearly a clean goal that is met. And it doesn't sort of cross that line. I take a lot of yoga classes, and I do find myself, even though the class might be 1 hour, and I know there's going to be a rest or a shavasana at the end, I wouldn't mind it being done in 15 minutes. I go, and I've had therapy, and I'm thinking that's sort of enough as well. And I'm using that as a marker, not with rigidity, but just as sort of, especially in the long term of maintaining, that you don't have to feel overwhelmed, that like this experience is going to overwhelm you. It's going to be so hard, so forth and so on, because that is really where things die. If you say, I want to spend time with this person, I have a very good experience and I'm getting what I'm looking for in this person, I probably can do this until I don't. And if you're thinking in long term and really, these words like commitment, these are all scary words.
They are. I already shut down.
They just
you
shut
just
you
said
down.
the C word.
I think
shut
if you're
down.
having a lovely time with a person and the work is getting done and the stories are being told, all of a sudden it's time to go. And you almost feel like, oh, I could have done more, but I'm not. I'm gonna still be a little hungry when I leave. That kind of thing.
And so how do you begin with a client?
Well, what will happen is that in that moment, they've already had an extended amount of time on the planet. So they
usually they're over 50.
Yeah,
right?
I am now sort of focusing over 50 and even older.
Okay.
I think the tough cases, where people have had real challenges, or they have some sort of disease, or they have certain, serious problems. Those are the ones that I kind of like to get in, because no one quite knows how to approach that. They have these sort of rote ways of what they do versus stepping inside the problem. I think if you're really the trainer, or is it a trainer? If you're the human that can step inside someone else's experience, then you're going to know what that experience is, and you will know the solutions, especially if you have an extensive vocabulary of what's going to heal, remove some pain, whatever that is. But it's really going to be so not about me. It's like meditation, where you're removed from everything. There is I don't know where I was, but I'm back now, and I will never know where that is. But you can do that in relationships.
You can
do that.
Remove those layers.
Remove those layers,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's prescriptions of ways of layering the experience of 50 minutes that, like sequencing in yoga, some of the best classes are the people who can sequence and feel and know the timing of these things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which you have quite a bit of.
Most people don't know, even experts. I was talking to a friend. I used to go to the opera a lot at the Met, because it was like walking distance. And I would go, what do you want to do, Ron? Maybe I had an artist out on tour when I was in that business. And I'd walk over, because there's always somebody holding some tickets, and I could buy them half price. And I know quite a bit about music. I went to school for music and I even studied some conducting. And I realized even with people that had season tickets who really knew a lot about the audience members that knew a lot about the opera and knew some of the great singers and had, invested some energy and desire to do that, I realized they probably still think that the conductor is just waving their hand, even at that level. And so no matter, in seeking, let's say, a professional like ourselves, there's more to know about that person. I mean, for the conductor looks passionate and everyone is following them, but they don't actually know what the person's doing.
It's true. It's not a language we speak.
No, it's just not what it is. And so, not that I'm comparing myself to a conductor or a great conductor at the Met, but there will be people that really understand the work so well. You won't have to know everything, but they will have the orchestra paying attention to the nuances. They'll have the singers and the staging working, and right over that conductor's head will be the experience that's happening from waving your arms. I mean, that's sometimes the distinction between one kind of trainer or expert and another. Yeah.
You said that beautifully. So that brings me to, you've mentioned yoga a few times here. How long have you been practicing yoga and how does it influence your coaching technique?
Yeah. I've actually been practicing yoga for, I think it's 42 years. And the reason...
Wait, so that puts you at, 42 years.
Yeah.
Makes you, I'm going to put you on the spot right here. How old are you?
I'm about to be 72 years old. August 18th, 1951, 72. What's kind of funny about that is when I was, let's say, 50, people would say, wow, you look like you're in your late 30s. And then, then you're 60. Wow, you kind of look like you're 52. And the gap keeps getting a little smaller.
You do have great skin, I have to say.
Thank you.
There is the lightness that is truly emanates from you.
Well, I'm not extreme, but I just, I take common sense care of myself. But one of those ways is you have to show up. And there's no, I've told so many people through the years, as you're managing your time and the things and the goals that you want, and if you've set them up well, there will be no negotiation along the path. For example, I go to yoga 4 times a week so that absolutely in a year, I absolutely average more than 3.5. So I put 4 in to get 3 something at a minimum. That's number 1. Number 2, what I do is there may be some spaces to change class sometime when necessary, but I will not even start the negotiation first thing in the morning while waking up, whether I'm going or not. That is the conversation's not allowed. And by repeating that enough, I won't ask of myself, well, do you want to go today or not? On occasion, when you're new with this kind of concept, you just have to tune to the benefit and the feeling. Go to the feeling about your commitment to yourself and go to the feeling that you actually have when you leave and you're talking to your classmates and everyone is elevated and they're going to carry that beauty out into the world. If that doesn't start to define why you're here, nothing does. To bring joy to others. You first have to own it and then you share it. And that's how that is, that's how it is integrated into my world and into my work.
Well, I like your focus because the rest of us will focus on the humdrum and the drudgery of trying to, first of all, waking up in the morning to get to our mats and what it entails in the drive. And, rather than focusing on the feeling, what you were just touching on, which is that feeling of what does it give you when, envisioning yourself walking out of the yoga studio that morning, hot, sweaty, delicious mess.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
That is now grounded.
That's right. And I've seen you that way. I have seen you elevated that way. And by the way, you do have a stunning practice. There's, people may put some energy on certain poses and how technically beautiful they are, but it's really, are you in flow? And are you at least expressing yourself to your fullest? And that's pretty much all that matters, because beginners are invited, with not really understanding their body yet. And you still walk away with the same prize.
You do.
And
even 42 years later, you're still walking away. With that.
And I sort of know one of the things that I learned to do. I don't know. I have to make things up because I just do. So when I was self-talking and being not so kind to myself, we all have these moments in which I'm not good enough for this, and we just move on to that. I really realized, and it really helped, that I am far from the best in the world at anything by millions of people. And I will always be that way. I will never be the best lover. I will never be the fastest runner. I will never be the best trumpet player. I will never be the funniest guy. None of that's ever going to happen. And I knew that to be true. And once that happened, then I had all the permission I needed just to truly just do the best I could. And that was, if I were pursuing me at my best, that's pretty much, that's going to take care of things.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
To acknowledge that, in that, those of us that are most interesting aren't good at one thing or the best at one thing. And so this has allowed you that space to be able to explore and discover all of the goodies along your journey, which range from being a yogi and fitness coach to then also, your life in the arts, which is a whole nother piece that I can't wait to delve into. And then, of course, the mind and the spirit that comes along with that. And so, I really...
Well, there's some of these classic things, but, there are certain classical, the reason they have the sustainability is because the message, whether it's classical ballet or philosophy, these have been able to be not disputed along any way. They move into variation. I was thinking, there's a lot of young trainers out there, and there's so many variations on everything. There's 4 trillion exercises. There's, for every sport, in everything. And I come back to what is the sweet spot of each of one of those things as we sequence for this moment with this person at this time, so that the dance is really enjoyable and doable and not confusing. And, because those classic principles will always work because they always have, the evidence is in. And, that's even as a classical trumpet player, which is sort of how I came up. There was a way of learning to play the trumpet. There was a classical form on doing that, and then that technique still has all the same attributes as yoga.
And this is your foundation.
Flexibility, range of motion, and all those things. They're all linked together. And the idea is to edit out. Just keep editing out. Editing is everything. Editing is everything, especially when you get older. I talk to people about all the things they don't listen to anymore, things they're not going to do, been there, done that. And now I have sculpted the most modern and clear version of myself.
We did touch on a little bit of the arts in your experience in the arts, but how do you weave this into your coaching, with your clients? How does that play a part?
Well, as I spoke earlier, because I came up as a classical piano player, I actually didn't say piano player. That was the first instrument, and then I wanted to play the drums. Again, like I'm thinking about the boy that jumps off the swimming pool at Happy Time Day Camp. Give me some drums. It's funny. I probably could have been diagnosed with several problems at that age because I had way too much energy. I don't think they quite had a trampoline when I was 5 or something. But when you come up with the responsibility, my parents really kept a close eye on us, and my father would drive us. Actually, we studied. All of us studied and began studying with a trio of women called the Hilger sisters. And they had the most unusual property. It was like from Vienna with geese and flowers and lilies. And then you'd walk into the house and there would be this smell. And this was an accomplished trio of women. Eventually, the cellist, they were a violin, piano, and cello. The cellist went on to be the principal cellist of the Philadelphia Orchestra.
Oh, wow.
And then there was the pianist and the violinist. The piano teacher, Greta, wow, I can't believe I found that, was only at piano, but Maria, the violinist, taught all the instruments, including into the school systems. So I asked her for a set of drums. Well, I can't do her accent again, but she says, I have a trumpet. That's loud. I looked at it and I said, oh, this is going to be easy. It only has 3 buttons. I said, yeah, and I could read music a little bit. Only even at this time, if I just put the energy out to all the trumpet players in the world, they would have laughed so hard at that 3-button joke, because it is a torturous instrument to not only learn, but you have to love it. You have to nurture it, and you can never turn your eye from it, or it will bite you in the ass. Wow. It's a tough instrument if you don't pay attention to it, and it takes quite a bit of skill. So I would say that being coming up classically and then performing, I think the first band of my own was a sort of a bit of a reproduction of the Tijuana Brass with Herb Alpert. And I played all these songs at school, and then I was in the pit orchestra for musicals, or in the orchestras. And I made my way through and into the music world, hoping to be a studio musician in New York City, which was incredibly naive, because those players that are playing on James Taylor records of trumpet sections, these are players from the Philharmonic, and these are incredible players. Yeah. And the gap was so wide. And then I was pulled into being into a dance company where I can make a living, and that would be fun. So this musical experience as a performer and as a person who learns these instruments and plays with others, and now being a jazz musician, particularly listening to the music, heighten those skills to bring that in. And I think what people used to say at my studio in Carnegie Hall, it's not that I was a perfectionist, but I did want things to be done particularly correctly, and with a bit of an aesthetic to it as well. Like, be the whole person while you're doing curls, and really know your wrist angles and where your elbow is. And those things have always captivated me, because obviously I couldn't perfect myself, but there were techniques that you could strive towards and do that, and of course avoid injury and get the full benefit of an exercise. So music and that culture. And actually, when I think about that period of time, I mean, I was a little boy, like with a little white tux jacket. Classical musicians in general, even today, are very serious little adults. They're kids, but my brothers too, we weren't kids that way. We took all that very seriously and really practiced and And it was required. My parents really made me practice. I had a baseball field in my yard, and everyone came over to play ball. And the piano was right at the window, eye level, at my friends playing baseball in my yard while I had to finish up. And I had to finish up or I wouldn't go out there.
Oh, wow.
And so
that's torturous.
it was. But, there's something to be said for an environment that was created that enabled discipline.
Sure.
And
discipline.
Without it being a dirty word. Because you were going to, it wasn't that for me at that time, I wasn't thinking I was going to be a better piano player by playing 15 more minutes, but I was going to get to the baseball field.
Right.
There were goals there.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is working that, it's the human in us.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
And
really honor the things, within a certain scope, of course, honor the things that you really want to do. Even today as a coach, I always examine people. I said, whatever you're doing for money, would you do it for free? Mm-hmm. It's not a big question. It's not, I didn't invent the question, but really think about that. Because if you're a bit tortured, and I have been with some of the richest, I know I've been with many of the richest people that live on the planet. Yeah. And they're not necessarily happy because they have money.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen all those things, and I've seen, with all the celebrities and all the stuff I've done, I've seen almost everyone have some self-esteem thing, or they feel they're fake at what they're doing, and they've gotten all these accolades, and they think all these other actors or musicians are better than them, and how do they get to be blah, blah, blah. Sure. You see it at all those levels.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway.
And actually, that brings me to my next question. So I'm glad you're touching on that, because you do have an impressive list of notable figures who've been influenced by your coaching. Can you share some insights into your work with them?
Yeah, this is always the celebrity part. Actually, not so much now, but sometimes now, people really once they read or do a little Google searching, they always want to know mostly about Sting.
Yes.
Yeah, Sting is kind of the one they really want to know about.
Oh, yeah.
Is he really nice? Is he this or is he that? And, I love him and I love his lyrics. And,
He's a fellow yogi.
Fellow yogi. That's right. Mm-hmm. So I'll speak a little bit of Sting. Okay. Actually, this is a funny story how we met. And I'll start with that. Okay. And this is sort of an odd way to join up. And it says so much about the person I was at that time. Your age? Yeah, I'm in my early 30s, I think. I'm about 32 years old. So there's this at 32, right? And I have a studio in Carnegie Hall, and it's filled with models and Morgan Stanley guys, and it's just filled with
are hot to trot.
Yeah, I'm the guy at the moment. I am the ice cream that people want at this moment. So a friend of mine, Porter Briggs, says, I'm having a party down in my loft in Little Italy. You want to come? Sting's going to be there. And I go, well, that sounds like fun. And he says, well, there's going to be some Russians there that are speaking to him about being one of the first performers to perform in Moscow. Like that trade-off wasn't happening back then, as it is today, right? Sure. Some of these types of places, China, Russia, are not exactly where all tours go. Right. So I asked these two model students of mine, and they're beautiful. They're like Vogue girls, and they're all this. I said, would you like to be my date? I want both of you to be my date. I did.
Be flanked by a model on either side.
I think they met me at my studio door in Carnegie Hall, and we took a cab or something, and we went down. And then I kind of knock on the door, and I walk in, and I have both girls on my arms, and I walk into this place. And I must admit, it was a little of a showstopper. Even I think Sting looked over and didn't speak. you know? And it was just a gag that I was like
fun.
pulling off.
I love it.
And it was just me being funny and fun, really. It
Sure.
wasn't about anything else.
Yeah.
But eventually we were sort of in this standing circle as parties go, right? Everybody's circulating. And Sting, with his British accent, says, I understand you're a trainer. He says, do you have any time tomorrow to work with me? And I think I
said, check my schedule. What do you say to that?
I did. I said, I don't think I can work with you tomorrow. I can get back to you, about that. But I think I'm open, blah, 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 3 days or something from that point on. I knew I was open.
Of course.
And I basically turned him down for that moment. Sting, sorry, Sting, I don't think you know this. And then he came into the studio. It was during the day. And, he's Sting. I think I have a couple of pictures. Back in the day, there weren't iPhones, and you didn't really do a lot of shooting with cameras and stuff like that in your studio. But what I do remember is that, he walked in and he was very nice, and I had him fill out this card, which he really didn't want to fill out. I think the card, I said, where do you live?
Tedious.
He just wouldn't fill anything out. I think he just signed his name.
Yeah.
And so we're working out. And back in that day, we used to make our cassette tapes of things to run for an hour, let's say. You'd be able to sort of have this gear that made cassette tapes, mixtapes. And I just threw one in because they were all good. And along the way, maybe about halfway, he was very out of breath, which is I was a very, I guess let's just say I was a tough trainer. The work at that time in the late 80s, 90s has an orientation to be really hard, really anaerobic and very strenuous. So your systems the alarms were going off in a way. And so, you have to let that settle down. So I had him walking in a circle. And I remember the song Russians that he recorded back then came on, and I had an incredible stereo system. And all of a sudden he's singing along with his own song, Russians, which is quite appropriate for today, right? And I just remember, and I've had moments like this, I remember to remember this moment.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm going, I'm here with Sting for the first time. He's in my studio, and he's singing in full voice because he's really warmed up. And he's singing to the top of his lungs with his own music. And I go, well, I won't curse, but I just said, holy mackerel. This
gives me
is something
goosebumps.
else. Yeah. So
wow.
we then went on to have and still do, a 35-year relationship. But that work, good work promotes extreme well-being. And that being can infiltrate and be in any avenue that the client chooses. So, I remember actually one concert, this is sort of a funny side thing, but Geraldo Rivero is one of my clients, and we were at a concert, and he was sitting next to me. This is a young Geraldo. This is baby Geraldo. And all of a sudden, Sting started to do this running in place. One of the things that we used to do is really get his knees up high while running, high as your shoulders, really doing that. And he just, the music was going, and he has this bass that's up by his neck. And he starts moving his legs in that fashion. It just sort of came to him. Wasn't trying to do it. It wasn't a choreographed moment on my part. But it happened, and then the crowd was cheering him on to do it faster and all that, which is kind of what I do, a little of that.
Yeah.
So that's just a fun little example of how that happens. And basically, as I was saying, if you're working on being conscious and whole, and you're working consciously on those attributes that that will do that, and you keep building that, that's what you're moving forward in the world, and the world is also moving towards you. It's an attribute of attraction. So you know, it sort of moves that way. And that's those are my thoughts on that.
No, I would define that as success.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Unless you want to add more to that, but truly that is really success or purpose, right? Is to really find the joy throughout in order to bring out the best stuff, right? I think that
it's so much fun when you I mean, back to a really earlier question about how do you work and what you do a little bit. One conscious thing is the thing that I'm very clear on is the human body is just a form, but it is controlled by a brain, you know, and if you are not first focusing on and extracting what you can find out about a human being based on sort of questions, organic questions, questions that are necessary in the relationship, you start to figure out how a person assembles their thinking. Or are they assembled, is some of this, let's say negative talk, and that's a common expression now, the sort of the things we say to ourselves, you know, is that even true? And if it is, well, we can work with that. If it's not, we can extract that. We can replace that with something that's true for yourself. And once you start to have a person actively and consciously hear themselves, they actually begin to work. And then the body will follow suit. And if you're prescribed something rather well, then it really accepts it rather well. You know, it's really fascinating.
Especially in the age group that we're talking about. I mean, we've had years and years and years and years of programming and patterning, right?
Yeah.
So this is no easy task.
No, it is not. You know, you will want to hold on to your story. And stories come in religion.
It's what we know. It's our comfort zone.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there are people, I think it was Aretha Franklin, who continued to marry men that beat her. And that was her comfort zone. It appeared to be her comfort zone. But if you can sort of infiltrate that kind of mind, then maybe the next time she finds a nice fellow, you know, that type of thing. And the same thing happens with, you know, I mean, these are my work because of being a trained life coach and an artist and a person who kind of know, I know this world. You are constantly in motion and, you know, helping sculpt someone towards their own desire and their own possibilities, things they don't even know are possible.
And touching on, you know, at the beginning of our conversation, we talked about things that are overwhelming and how we shut down when we think of certain words. And so, you know, it sounds like what you propose is something manageable. And even if you shift just slightly, even if you can just alter that patterning or you know, peel it back slightly so that that person, that trajectory shifts.
Absolutely.
In the end, after so much time, the gap is this big.
Well,
right?
it's so true. I had the opportunity to meet Neil Armstrong, and I spent a lot of time talking with him, and I'll tell you maybe a little bit later about that. But what I will tell you, for example, if there's a trajectory that's sort of kind of like this, let's say you're heading towards the moon, and you move 4 degrees that way from where you are to the location, you won't even see the moon. You miss the moon. Your intention is to land on the moon and put an American flag there. But if the calculation is off or there's no awareness that this is possible, you will not land where you are intending to be. And if you are, you know, I mean, it's geometry. You know, it's a straight line between point A and point B. And if you're not designing the line or the calibrations to land where you want to land, you don't get the prize. Whether it's like, I want to be on a talk show, or I want to be at a Broadway musical, or, you know, and then there's luck. And, not a lot of people talk about luck, but being in the right place at the right time. I was thinking the other day, I even looked it up a little bit, the expression 6 degrees of separation, right? They're always saying you're 6 friends away from something, a person, the president, whatever it is. And so the way I was framing it and the way I experienced, I made this up in my head. I saw a pyramid, a 3-dimensional pyramid, where the most, let's say people, or objects, the most amount can be on the floor level. Sure. But as you continue to make tiers until you're sort of in the last top portion of it, well, it's no longer 6 degrees of separation. I mean, I'll tell you stories where I'll meet someone in 1 year, and I don't know this to happen, but they will be married to that person the following year, and we both don't know that's going to happen. Or you're just in environments now that are 1 degree of separation or no separation. You're just on the top floor, and that's where all the people you have an interest in are. There they are. And so you're just in one single room. There's just no separation. Oh, you're looking for an apartment in New York? Well, here, talk to that person in real estate right there. Oh, you'd like to, look for a great investment banker who can really manage your money? Oh, that person's right over there. There's no changing floors anymore. Yeah. And that's fascinating,
Oh, that sure is. Oh, my goodness. And so where would you say you are at this point in your life?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I have backed off. I at times I was sort of in that space, the Hamptons and the wealthy people, the famous people, and there was, I'm bringing my. For example, it was Annabella Sciorra. I worked with her. She's an actress. She also is sort of part of the Me Too movement at this point with Harvey Weinstein. But I remember saying, "Oh, come to this play that my friend Julianne Moore's doing on Off-Broadway." Maybe it was Off-Broadway. It was almost like on 42nd Street or something. And went to see that. And then the next day, Julianne's in my studio with Annabella, So that was that top thing for a while. You just, and that was the world you were in. Now, in that world, I sustained it for a while. And then, they talk about, on the way down that ladder. I mean, I crashed and burned, to hit bottom.
And I don't know anyone on that note that can sustain being at that top floor. Yeah. There is no one that hasn't or is inevitably going to.
Yeah. I mean, with the intro about the extraordinary and all that. Yeah. The only thing that that is interesting to me is that, as knowing with others as well, but to me personally, is how many triumphs, how many bottoms have I had? This all looks good. I did this, and I went in with the 2 models and their Sting and all that. But in reality, divorce, alcoholism, I can give you the list. Having money, losing it all that. But the thing is, like that same kid on the diving board, I'm still here. That's what I don't need to be in the little pyramid thing. Yeah. I'm just in a studio apartment right now in Savannah, Georgia, moving to West Palm Beach to find a new life. I'm doing it now at 72.
Yes. And let me tell you, to the audience, it is palpable. This, I am here jumping off the diving board. I feel that. And I felt that the moment I met you. Yeah.
Well, when you hit bottom enough and you survived it, your risk level goes a little bit higher. Your risk, yes, calculation.
It's like duality.
That is necessary. Go, we'll probably cut this out of the video. But I said to someone, I have risen more than Jesus. He has nothing on me. So, and I support that. And all the fancy people also have hit hard. I know I've had very fancy people crying on my lap, and you're going, wow, look look what's happening here. You know, so yes.
So Ron, tell me about your time in New York City.
New York City, young Ron Helman.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Trouble.
I'm 23.
I picture you jumping off that diving board.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot there. I mean, I had been going to New York earlier than that on a Greyhound bus to study with a trumpet teacher named Carmine Caruso. And my parents would drive me to the bus station. I would take an hour ride, get off at Port Authority. I think I was 16, junior in high school or something like that. And right onto the street were Rolls Royces, pimps, prostitutes, pornography. And I walked to 46th Street after looking at the titles and talking to my new friends, pimps and prostitutes, who actually protected me. They were very nice to me.
Oh, wow.
I'd make my way to a trumpet lesson, and I do the lesson, and I get back on the bus. It was sort of the prescribed routine that my parents accepted. And they knew about the prostitutes and the pimps and all that. Matter of fact, there was one store that I always walked by. I think it was called Bonds, B-O-N-D. And in the window were like all the pimp hats. You know, like every pimp, like the perfect pimp hats. And I said, God, I wish I could wear one of those because they were so cool. But
have you ever?
No. Maybe I'll get one or, do that. But I moved to New York in 1973 to the East Village on 2nd Avenue between 9th and 10th to a second story store that then I sort of renovated a little bit. The rent was $300, and I got a roommate who would pay $200.
Oh, well
so
done.
For 7 years, I paid $100 a month. Wow. Which is what you
did. This roommate, was he aware that he was paying 2/3 of the?
Yes, and it was a she who actually went on to some notable fame. I had a few roommates, but the one that I'm speaking of is a woman named Joanne Mayhew Young, and she went on. Her alias was Gracie Mansion. Now, Gracie Mansion is alive and well today, and a fully spirited, interesting human being. Now, she was entering the art world as a bit of a gallery owner and collected the young East Village artists. She was the person who would pull off antics like Soho is just beginning to develop and it's getting fancy for the rich people. And she rented like a Cadillac and she brought the paintings and the artists, like I think they like wrote on it. And she drove down and parked like on Spring and Prince or something. And she was selling her art out of the back of her car.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And this was very interesting, very fine art. And some of those artists went on to be exceptional today. And I talked to her about a half a year ago, and she was still the same spirit. And she went on to do some great things and still is doing some great things. But my time in New York was still no internet, no cell phones, none of that. So you wouldn't stay in your apartment. You simply, even if you didn't know what you were going to do, you knew you were going to eat or something, you step out and you just make a decision to go right or left and you start walking. And what would happen is you're looking at like, I'll be on, I don't know, East 7th Street and I'll see a party on the top floor of a brownstone. You just walk up and you go to the party. Oh, and there's dancers there and there's artists and there's poets. It was that really romantic, and it was real. And so you met some interesting people, found some girlfriends, and you were sort of in this world. That lasted a while I was in the dance company. And then, as mentioned earlier, a gentleman named Radu was seeking the first time he was ever going to hire someone. He was his own one-man show. And I went up for an interview and I had a portfolio thing of my dancing and me doing some gymnastics, and he was so not interested in any of that. But what I did learn was that, say what?
What was he looking for?
He was looking for like an exercise teacher. This would be like some of the school that he was from. He went to school in Romania and he studied physical culture. That's what it was called then. And it was very like pre-Joseph Pilates, medicine ball, weights, benches. It was a lot, and he was very good at it. And there was a gentleman named Bob Giller, a doctor, one of the first holistic doctors in Manhattan. And that doctor, Bob, attracted very famous people. And those people then were prescribed to go over to Radu's. So I walk into Radu's and, he hires me.
Yeah, that's not intimidating at all.
Yeah, and I'm going, okay, I'm here, and he's going to show me a type of transference of my artistic thing to, we're going to lift weights and this is what we're doing here. Now I knew something about it being a gymnast, but not from that Eastern physical culture Pilates world. Yeah. And I learned it, and I was good at it, except I refined it. I couldn't help but make it a little cleaner, a little more artistic, and bring kind of who I am to the party. And that worked rather well. But, I'm now looking at, John F. Kennedy Jr., Lee Rosewall, Anthony Quinn. I'm talking to Anthony Quinn about his movies, but that he does sculpture. There was that was a top shelf group of people, the Kennedys and those kinds of people. Candice Bergen, I think, I worked with her. But but one of the cute, funny, a girl that used to work at the desk. Oh God, you're gonna have to help me. I'll get it in a second. Jennifer Grey, Dirty Dancing.
Oh my goodness!
Was a little baby Jennifer Grey.
No.
Maybe 17, something like that. Gosh. She was the desk girl, and her father Joel used to sit and wait for her to get done so they'd go out to dinner or stuff like that. But I gave a fun class to Jennifer and Ellen Barkin, an actress who was, I think she had like a cat suit on or something. She was like the hottest, actress, beautiful, kind of intense. She had a lot of intensity, and I would give the two of them like a lesson. And I already had been working with a businessman named Ron Perlman. Now I knew him and I knew her, but they didn't know each other per se. Only later that Ellen would marry Ron.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and sort of enter that world. And that's why, back to that degrees of separation, all of a sudden, things are coming. And then my friends, Bob Summers and Susan Kaysen Summers, I used to go to their house. He started as I think a graphic artist and album designer at CBS Records. And he went on to be like the president of Sony International. And Susan used to go out with Ron Perlman for 7 years, and I think won a palimony case or something like that. So I'm going into their brownstone, and all this stuff is getting all mixed up. But then I'm getting recommended to sort of amazing people, part of my clientele. Howard Gittes, partner with Ron Perlman. And
what an incredible time.
Oh.
Now you had a studio.
Yes, I had a studio, right? Yeah. After Radu and I, how would I put it? He kind of wanted the energy that all the women saw him. And again,
what man doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. And they were starting to turn their heads a little to me. I was young and had a nice body and all this kind of stuff. And that wasn't a tremendous problem, but it was he was just starting to be unkind to me a little bit. At least that's my experience. So one day, maybe on a lunch, I walked over to Carnegie Hall, and someone was giving up their studio when I walked into the room, and I said, I'm looking for a studio. I know you have studios. Well, the person that just walked out is giving up their studio. I'll show you the studio. I saw the studio. It was like one of the biggest studios, 19-foot ceilings on what they call the 9th floor. Carnegie Hall is like 7 floors. And then there's an 8th floor that has studios, and you can really get around the building. And from 9 to 15 is an L shape. And I was on the 9th floor. You could step out right onto the roof.
Oh,
like that. So I said, I'll take it. And I had no money and know anything. And I had nothing. I just were able to pay my rent, you know. So I talked to some of my clients from Radu's, and I said, would you loan me X amount of money, which was nothing to them, and I can get a lease and I can start a business, and hence that's what happened. And that's how I got into Carnegie Hall.
And how long were you there?
I think I was there almost 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was quite, you know, I'd go up the elevator with, you know, Isaac Stern, the violinist, you know, Don Shirley, a piano player who's just, and Don Shirley's place, I mean, Google it. I mean, I think he's no longer with us, but he was a African-American singer, pianist, gay. I think he actually had a throne that he sat on. You know, it could be. Or the photographer Bill Cunningham, he was the guy who sort of moved into the fashion world, and he had a studio there, and he basically wore khakis and like this blue nylon thing, and he'd take his bike and he'd go down to 57 and 7th and shoot all the fashionable people on the outside who were wearing clothes, and he became an unbelievable sensation. He had a little studio with filing cabinets all around him and literally a bunk bed, 2 feet wide. And he rose to incredible fame. And I think he started out as a hat designer or something like that. So he became a bit of my friend. You know, we'd go down the elevator.
What a cast of characters.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
so a lot
goodness.
happened in Carnegie Hall. And so there was a transition from Radu to 57th Street. And then that was really where life changed. I mean, it changed at Radu's, but then I had my own clients, notable clients that were going on at that time. Yeah, so there it is.
Now, I read somewhere something about your pantomime, excuse me.
Oh yeah, New York pantomime.
Yes, can you tell me a little bit about
Yeah,
that?
that's interesting. I didn't have resistance to that, but here's how that happened. I was performing at Lincoln Center at the band shell outdoors in the summer series. And I generally had leading roles as a rule. I was sort of the lead male in different things or different times. And in this particular program, there was a gentleman named Moni Yakin who was sitting in the audience and had a playbill. And back in those days, you could just go on your landline and dial 411 and say, give me the telephone number of Ron Helman.
That's right.
And so I get this call and it's like, hello? You know, he's Israeli, but he lived a lot in Paris. And he says, I saw you do what I saw you do. You know, says, can you teach that? And I go, yeah, you know, like Martha Cram or Paul Taylor, it has a technique. He says, I want you to teach my actors at Juilliard. And he says, it was something like, can you come in Monday and start? You know, that kind of thing. No vetting, no resume, just like I see what you have.
Yep.
And all of a sudden I was at Juilliard for 8 years, teaching the second year students. And so I know like I know a lot of famous actors that were baby actors, like, you know, Kevin Spacey, Kelly McGillis, Laura Linney. There's a number of them.
Oh my goodness.
And they were all sophomores in college. And that was really quite an awakening to see the commitment. You know, remember I was talking about classical musicians, that's a different breed. You talk about a young actor who got accepted to Juilliard and the work that they are willing to do. And again, I probably have like 15 superstars, you know, that came out of that school.
Sure.
You know, fantastic.
What are these humans as babies? You know, when we see the end result, right, and what they've created and who they became.
Yeah.
What did you see back then in them?
Well, you know, they have certain characteristics that are similar. Oh, what is that girl? Was it? She was on the first few series of Housewives. No, not Housewives. No, I'm just losing her name. But I'll tell you, like Kevin Spacey, for example, was very good at impersonations. I mean, very good at them. I mean, he'll do Johnny Carson, or it's It's incredible. He learned to do me, and they set it up that I walked in to teach a class, and he was pretending to be me teaching the class. And I'm hearing this voice and seeing my face and my body language on Kevin Spacey. And that was quite something. So, yeah, but they're young. You know, they're really, but oh, so eager. You know, I mean, I don't want to use the term ambitious, although it's real. But the drive to want to do the work, which everyone often forgets that all these actors, they really love the work. Yeah. You know, sure. I mean, being a celebrity is sort of a difficult thing to do. You know, if you're a Brad Pitt, I mean, how do you bring how do you develop a character without them seeing all of Brad Pitt, you know, and all his stories? But yeah, they were fun. That was a lot of fun to teach. I think I have a couple of pictures of me teaching somebody. Yeah.
Fascinating. And so it sounds from what I understand, you put a pause on your trumpet.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
About 20 years or so.
Yeah. I think I say 20, but I think it's 23.
Okay.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, all of this is unfolding.
Right.
Right in your life.
Yeah.
And then what prompted you to pick that trumpet up and dust it off?
Well, yet again, another divorce. My friend Bob Dennison and crashing and burning. All of this is happening at the same time. He said, I'm going to pick you up. I'll have my driver pick you up. We're going to drive to my private jet, and we're going to go to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And you're going to just relax, and I'm going to help you here, you know, with all this. And then I landed in Santa Fe, and I think the next day, through a type of beautiful guidance in a way, I'm sitting in an AA meeting, you know, and I'm looking around and going, oh, whoa. Like,
what am I waking up to?
What's happening here? And as I'm sitting in an AA meeting, I'm sort of in recall of how I learned to do certain things coming from the background and the simple background that I came from in New Jersey, in the farmlands in New Jersey. And so I remember, let's say at a fancy dinner or meeting some people, I would watch what everyone would be doing, like which fork went where, who drank what, and what was going on, and then I would just follow suit. So when I was sitting in the AA meeting, which I knew not how it worked, I just looked around and I said, okay, let's just sit here. Let's just stay still, you know, because I'm already kind of like a deer in headlights that I'm even there and facing the reality that I'm going to say, hi, I'm Ron and I'm an alcoholic, because that's what everyone else did. I won't say I had a tremendous relief in that idea, because I was holding on to the idea as a substitute way of framing it was, hi, I'm Ron, and I'm really a fun guy, and I happen to drink a lot when I have fun. So I had to reframe it that I think we have a problem here. And I haven't had a drink, you know, I'm coming up on 28 years. Wow. So I take no prescription drugs, like ever, no recreational anything, no drinking. I mostly drink water as my liquid. And I have been rebuilt. You know, old car, Ferrari running the race real hard. Those tires are wearing out. I'm now a rebuilt person. And I am so grateful for that. So I had a sponsor that, you know, in those dark times, he would say, Ron, a sober day is a great day. So whatever's going on, whatever you think is going on, or whatever you're projecting in the future, whatever's going on, you were absolutely sober today, because let's have a recall of some of the stories that are involved in a life like mine in the Hamptons and with the fancy people and all this kind of stuff. I was holding on for dear life, even, you know, I guess part of it is because I exercised so much and I was so healthy that way. It kept a speeding skier from hitting the tree. Sure. Until the tree just jumped right in front of me and it was pow. So anyway, that's how I spent my time, in Carnegie Hall, and eventually making my way to Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I started another fitness practice with some really interesting people. Very well-known artists, and Bob Dennison had a house there as well. So he introduced me. I jumped up to the mini pyramid a little bit. All of a sudden, I'm now with those people, and I have clients. He sold me his car, a used car that he had there. I think it was an 80s blue Mercedes diesel wagon, something like that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I would drive. I met this wonderful couple, Pete and Lynn Conway, that had a ranch. They had several things. They were very, very wealthy, but beautiful people. I drive 1 hour to get to Dead Horse Ranch. They had a full gym, beautiful gym. I would train both of them and drive back. On the way back, it was more uphill, and that diesel, I'm almost thinking it's going to slide
one
backwards.
Of these days.
Yeah.
I've had that experience.
Yeah.
Whew, that's not fun.
So a little like that.
Yeah.
And all those dark stories are reframed because of where I've landed now. And I still, I'm talking for a while, but I hope it is read that I am truly a humble and grateful person, and I can tell these stories, and that's all they are. They're some of my stories, but I'm sincere in who I am today, and I'm sincere in the work, and I'll be in Palm Beach, and I'll be playing gigs, and I'll be working with people.
So what's taking you to Palm Beach?
Well, it was my friends Ginger and Jerry. Okay. I went to see them, who were teachers of mine at Carnegie Hall, and that was a wild couple. I introduced them, and they still are a wild couple.
Oh, I love it.
And so, I tend to not hold back on, how are you doing? I don't want to always. I no longer present the shiny Ron Helman. Here, this is kind of what's working, and this is what's not working. And so finally, she was telling me what she was doing currently, and she had a bunch of private clients, and they were all over 60, just about, one being 90, and how fulfilling it was, and going to their houses. And yes, this is now a simplified program, but very fulfilling for her. And she just looks at me, she has sort of a way of whispering, like as though, she's going to tell you a secret. She goes, Ron, you should really do this. You should move to Florida. And I thought, wow, that would be one heck of a loop.
It sure would, literally. You are making your loop.
Making a full circle.
Yes.
So I've been sort of putting energy into looking into that, and it does, by all appearances, look, that's what I'm going to be doing. And yet again, finding another community and another groups of people to teach them. Because I want to pursue music in the fashion that I do, I'm only going to take 10 clients at twice a week and work for 20 hours. But I can really bring the focus in to those very specific people and leave it there and still have a full, rich life of choices and music and arts and other kinds of people other than clients.
And in the music arena, where do you see yourself?
Well, I've done this before, and I've already started to meet like a bass player and a guitar player. And
because you've got your trio here in Savannah, right?
Yeah.
We're all very sad to see. I sure did.
Yeah.
And here I am.
Yeah. Well, again, the circular motion, and again, they're really, even though we cannot fight sort of the ways of a universe. I mean, there is a yin and a yang, and why did that one tree get hit by lightning and the rest lived? There's no explaining that. You can try to, which humans
we all do, right?
Humans just need an answer to everything. And if you watch, let's say, the old Jay Leno show or Jimmy Kimmel, they'll ask a person, they feel so required to give you an answer, and what they say is so phenomenal and so funny, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So I don't do any of that. So I
Yeah.
showed up to my friend's house, and they were just warm and welcoming, and I will find my way there, and I'm just waiting for a particular building to be finished so I can move into it, which could look like late September, early October, something like that.
Oh, this is so exciting.
Yeah,
I can't wait to see what unfolds.
Yeah.
This new chapter.
And thank you. And you're starting a business.
I am. Yes.
Tell me
and
about
that's
that.
underway. I'm
Yeah.
very, very excited. Yes, we just announced that my husband and I are opening a infrared sauna and cold plunge studio here in Savannah.
Wow.
It's going to be located right across from Whole Foods. So great location.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
And we'll have 6 rooms or cabins with infrared sauna and 1 cold plunge and infrared sauna deluxe room in order to do a circuit training, so to speak.
Oh, that's nice.
So I'm really, really excited. Health and wellness has always been a passion of mine. You know, when you talk about would you work doing what you do for free?
Yeah.
And this is just something that's a no-brainer for me. And regardless of what may come or may not come our way.
And
it is something that...
And you're also recently married, and you extended your name. What is your full name?
It's now Fiona Monique Haggerty.
I
Monique
know.
is my middle name.
Isn't that nice?
So I know. It does have a nice ring to it.
I love it.
Yeah. It's a whole new world, a whole new chapter in my life. And I think what I realize, as you have mentioned as well, at this stage, it's truly what fulfills us and what gives us joy that I can't wait to help others and to get others, provide them, whether it's recovery from workouts and fitness. A lot of athletes use the cold plunge and infrared sauna as well for recovery. Or they're healing from, an autoimmune disorder or simply a meditative space. Which is so needed in this world.
It's people like you and people like our community balance out this world. That in a sense we're the good news. We are providing the good news and the things that actually really matter deeply, and that's the wellness of one human being at a time. And everyone is welcome.
That's right. Well, that does help me sleep at night.
Yeah.
We can each do our part in some way.
Yeah.
And if it's your natural, if it comes from within, there's no denying it.
Yeah.
So it's exciting.
Well, thank you, my friend.
Oh, Ron.
That was fun.
So excited for you.
Okay, thank
Wonderful to know you, and I'm excited for.
Yeah, we'll do a podcast.
Yes, podcast is next.
Okay.